Deep in the cold silence of space near the edge of the Andromeda frontier, the stars burned like distant campfires in an endless night. The United Galactic Coalition fleet hung in formation 100 warships strong, their hulls scarred from weeks of brutal fighting. Alarms blared softly inside the command cruiser Zenith, as damage reports scrolled across every screen. Oxygen levels were low, coolant lines had ruptured in 3 sectors, and half the crew had not slept in over 30 hours. They were tired, they were scared, and they were losing. The enemy was unlike anything they had ever faced. The Thera swarm of insectoid ships moved as one mind, tearing through colonies like locusts through wheat. They did not negotiate, they did not warn, they simply consumed. Entire worlds had gone dark in their wake. Planets reduced to hollow shells stripped of life and metal and memory. Now the swarm was closing in on the last offensive. Line and the Coalition had no more reserves, no more tricks. On the bridge of the Zenith, Lieutenant Lisa Morales sat hunched over her sensor console, her fingers flying across the glowing panels. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy knot, and dark circles ringed her eyes, but her focus never wavered. She had been scanning the debris field left behind when the moon of Tila 7 shattered under Cathar fire. Most of her fellow officers had written it off as junk, but something about the energy readings nagged at her. There it was again, a faint ripple in the background radiation. Not mechanical, not natural. It pulsed like a heartbeat, slow and steady. She zoomed in, adjusting the filters. Nothing showed on visual. No heat signature, no engine trail, no transponder code. Just a patch of space that seemed to swallow light. "Hey, Dana," she called out, voice low but urgent. "You need to see this." Captain Dana Ellis turned from the main viewport, her sharp features tense but calm. She walked over, boots clicking against the metal floor. "What is it, Lise? I don't know, but it's there. Look at Sector G7. It's not Cathar. It's not ours. And it's moving." Dana's eyes narrowed as she studied the data. It made no sense. The object was drifting through the wreckage of Celo 7 as if it belonged there. No thrusters, no ion trail. Just gliding like a leaf on a breeze. "Get me a visual," she ordered. The main screen flickered, then resolved into a grainy image. At first it looked like a shadow clinging to a chunk of moon rock. Then it shifted. Slowly it peeled away, revealing a shape unlike any ship in the Galactic Registry. Long and sleek, it curved like a blade forged from night itself. Its surface was smooth black but not reflective. It drank the starlight around it, leaving a void in its wake. Along its spine ran a line of faint blue veins that pulsed in time with the signal Lisa had detected. "What in the void?" "Is that?" whispered Ensign Carter from the comm station. No one answered. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support and the distant groan of stressed metal. Then, without warning, the ship stopped. Everyone froze. On screen, the black vessel turned, not with the jerk of thrusters, but with the grace of a dancer. It faced the Zenith directly, as if it had known they were watching all along. Then a hatch opened on its upper hull. A figure stepped out. She was tall, slender, almost ethereal. Silver hair streamed behind her, though there was no wind in the vacuum. Her skin glowed faintly like moonlight on snow, and her eyes were the color of frozen stars, pale blue and endless. She wore a simple robe that shimmered like water, and around her neck hung a pendant, shaped like a coiled serpent, but it was what stood beside her that made Lisa gasp. A dragon, not a machine, not a drone, but a living creature of scale and sinew. It was massive, easily the size of a small freighter. Its body covered in iridescent scales that shifted from deep violet to emerald green as it moved. Its wings were folded against its back like sails of living crystal, and from its nostrils curled slow plumes of violet, mist that shimmered and vanished in the cold. The dragon lowered its head until it was level with the elf woman. She reached up and placed a hand on its snout. They did not speak. They did not need to. The bond between them was clear in the way they moved, in the way they breathed as one. On the bridge of the Zenith, no one moved. No one breathed. Then the Cathar swarm appeared. From the edge of the debris field, hundreds of jagged black ships surged forward like a wave of teeth. They had been drawn by the energy pulse, or perhaps by the presence of the strange vessel. Their formation tightened as they closed in on the lone ship. Lisa braced for impact. The Cathar would tear it apart in seconds. But something strange happened. As the lead Cathar ship came within 1,000 kilometers, it slowed. Then the next one. Then the next. Within moments, the entire swarm had halted. Not in confusion, not in fear, but in something that looked like recognition. The elf woman raised her right hand palm open toward the swarm. She did not gesture, she did not shout. She simply held her ground. and the Cthar responded. One by one, the insectoid ships tilted their forward sections downward in what could only be described as a bow. Then as one they turned and retreated, back into the darkness, leaving the black ship alone. Once more, on the zenith, the crew stared in stunned silence. That can't be a human. Warship, can it? Dana whispered more to herself than anyone else. Lisa shook her head slowly. Humans don't have dragons, and they sure as hell don't make ships that look like that. Then who is she? I don't know. But she just made the Cthar bow. Dana's mind raced. Protocol demanded she report this immediately, but something in her gut told her to wait. This was not an enemy. It might not even be an ally. But it was important. Deeply important. Open a secure channel, she said, voice steady. Full encryption. Broadcast on all neutral bands. Let's see if she listens. The comms officer nodded, fingers trembling as he typed. A soft chime echoed through the bridge. This is Captain Dana Ellis of the United Galactic Coalition vessel Zenith. You are in a contested zone. Identify yourself and your intent. For a long moment there was only static. Then a voice filled the speakers. It was soft, melodic, but layered with something ancient like wind through stone ruins or waves against forgotten shores. It did not speak in words at first. It spoke in feeling. A wave of calm washed over the bridge, easing the tension in every shoulder, the fear in every chest. Then words formed, not in any known language, but somehow understood by all. We are not here to fight. The voice paused as if choosing its next words with care. We are here because you have forgotten. Forgotten? What? Lisa asked aloud before she could stop herself. The screen flickered. The image of the elf woman filled the main display. Her eyes seemed to look straight into Lisa's soul. You have forgotten who you are, and who you were meant to become. Before anyone could respond, the black ship began to move again. Not away, not toward them. It simply turned and glided deeper into the debris field, vanishing behind a cloud of shattered rock and ice. Dana's hands clenched into fists. She wanted to chase it, to demand answers. But the Cthar were still out there and her ship was barely holding together. Lisa, keep tracking it. Don't lose her. Yes, Mom. As the minutes passed, the crew slowly returned to their duties, but the mood had shifted. The fear was still there, but now it was mixed with wonder, with hope, with questions that had no answers. In the engineering bay, a young technician named Mara Jenkins wiped grease from her hands and stared at the live feed on her wristpad. She had seen the dragon. She had heard the voice, and something inside her stirred. A memory that was not hers, a lullaby in a language she had never learned. On the bridge, Dana stared out at the stars. The war was not over. The Cthar would return. The Devourers, the true enemy whispered about in old intelligence files, were still coming. But for the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Possibility. Far away in the dark, the black ship drifted onward, its silver guardian. Standing tall on the hull, her dragon curled protectively at her side. They were not here by accident. They had been waiting, and now that humanity had finally looked up and seen them, they would not look away again. The galaxy held its breath, and somewhere deep in the bones of every human, a spark began to glow. The black ship did not vanish for long. 3 hours after it disappeared into the debris field, it reappeared near the Coalition supply depot orbiting the dead world of Varel. This time it did not stay silent. A signal pulsed from its core, not through comms, but through every neural implant in the fleet. It was not sound. It was memory. On the bridge of the Zenith, Dana clutched her head as images flooded her mind. She saw green hills under twin suns. She saw humans in simple clothes walking beside tall, silver-haired beings. She saw dragons coiled around ancient trees, their scales glinting like jewels. The humans were not slaves. They were not pets. They were partners, equals, friends. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving her breathless and shaking. Lisa was already at her console, her face pale. Captain, that signal, it wasn't data. It was a memory. And it came from inside us. What do you mean? I ran a deep scan on the signal pattern. It matches dormant DNA markers in human genome, specifically in the non-coding regions we used to call junk DNA. But it isn't junk. It's a library, and someone just opened the first page. Dana's mind raced. If what Lisa said was true, then humanity had been carrying this secret inside them for thousands of years. But why now? Why here? Before she could answer, a new alert flashed on the main screen. The black ship was broadcasting again. This time it was a single repeating phrase in every known language and some no one recognized. We are the keepers, and you have forgotten your oath. The words echoed through every ship in the fleet. On the medical deck, a nurse dropped a tray of tools, tears streaming down her face. In the engine room, a grizzled chief engineer stood frozen as a childhood lullaby he had not heard since his mother died played in his head. On the bridge, Mara Jenkins, the young technician, stared at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. She had felt it too, not just the memory but something deeper. A pull, a call. Dana's comms officer turned pale. Captain High Command is demanding we lock weapons on the target. They say it's a Cathar trick, a new kind of mind weapon. Dana's jaw tightened. Tell them no. Not until we understand what this is. But Mom, that was an order. Meanwhile, Mara slipped away from her station. She was not supposed to leave without permission, but something inside her would not let her stay. She took a maintenance shuttle and flew toward the black ship alone. Her heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She did not know why she was doing this. She only knew she had to. As her shuttle approached, the black ship did not fire. It did not warn. It simply opened a bay door and waited. Mara docked with trembling hands. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor lit by soft blue light. The walls were not metal. They felt warm like living wood. Vines with glowing leaves curled along the ceiling, and the air smelled of rain and old books. She walked deeper into the ship, drawn by a hum that matched her own heartbeat. At the center of the vessel, she found a chamber open to the stars. In the middle stood the silver-haired woman, Lyra. The dragon lay curled around her like a living throne, its eyes half closed but watching. Mara stopped 10 paces away. She did not speak. She did not need to. Lyra turned. Her eyes held no anger, no suspicion, only sadness. You remember, don't you? She said, her voice like wind through tall grass. Mara nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I don't know how, but yes. I remember the hills. The dragons. The songs. Lyra smiled faintly. The memory is waking in you faster than the others. Your blood is close to the old line. What old line? The line that guarded Earth when the sky cracked open, when the great silence came. We could not save your world then. So we saved you. Mara stepped closer. What happened? Long ago, your ancestors faced a darkness that ate stars. It was not the Cathar. It was older, hungrier. It fed on memory itself. When it came for Earth, we had no weapons that could stop it. So we did the only thing we could. We wove your minds, your hopes, your dreams into our own bodies. We carried you across the void until Earth could heal. Then we returned you. But the link was broken. You forgot us, and in forgetting you forgot yourselves. Mara looked at the dragon. Is that why it has human DNAs? Valrin here carries the blood of 10,000 humans in his scales. Every breath he takes sings your names. Every beat of his heart echoes your courage. Back on the Zenith, Dana received word that Mara had left the ship. She was furious at first, then afraid. But when she saw the shuttle dock safely with the black vessel, she knew Mara had done what none of them dared. Lisa came running onto the bridge holding a data pad. Captain, you need to see this. I ran a full genetic comparison between Mara and the dragon. It's not just similar. It's symbiotic. The dragon cells contain human mitochondrial DNA, and Mara's cells respond to the dragon's biofield. They are connected at the cellular level. Dana's eyes widened. So they are not just allies. They are part of us. Exactly. At that moment, Admiral Carter of High Command appeared on the main screen. His face was hard, his voice cold. Captain Ellis, you have disobeyed direct orders. That vessel is a threat. You will stand down and allow us to engage. With all due respect, sir, we don't know what it is yet, but it just showed us memories of Earth before the Great Silence. Memories no one has ever recorded. Lies. It is a Cathar illusion. Destroy it now. I can do that, sir. Then you are relieved of command. The screen went dark. Seconds later, a priority override flashed on the Zenith systems. Remote control had been activated from High Command. Weapons powered up. Targeting locked on the black ship. No, Dana shouted. Shut it down, Lisi can't. They bypassed my access. On the black ship, Lyra looked up as if sensing the shift in the air. Mara felt it too. A cold dread filled her chest. They are going to fire, she whispered. Lyra nodded. They fear what they do not understand. But fear will not save them. She turned to Valrin and placed a hand on his snout. The dragon rose slowly, unfolding wings that shimmered like stained glass. Together they walked to the edge of the open chamber and stepped into the void. Mara watched from the bay as they floated above, the ship calm and still as the coalition weapons charged. On. The Zenith, the targeting computer, beeped. Firing solution ready. Dana's heart pounded. She had one chance. She slammed her fist on the emergency override panel, a manual kill switch only captains knew about. Sparks flew as she ripped open the casing and yanked the primary relay. The weapons went dark. "Sir," she said into the comms, her voice shaking but firm. "I cannot in good conscience allow this. If that ship is a threat, let it prove it. But if it is what it claims to be, then we are about to kill the only hope we have." Silence answered her. On the black ship, Lyra raised her arms. Valrin opened his jaws not to roar but to sing. A low, deep note filled space, not heard with ears but felt in the bones. The note spread through the fleet, touching every human on every ship. In that moment, every person remembered something. A grandmother's story. A dream of flying. A feeling of being watched over in the dark. The memory was different for each, but the truth was the same. They were never alone. Back on the Zenith, Lisa stared at her screen. The dragon's song was not just sound. It was a carrier wave for genetic data. It was reactivating dormant sequences in human DNA. People were waking up. Mara floated near Lyra, now held in a bubble of air the elf woman had made. "Why us?" she asked. "Why now? Because the Devourers are coming," Lyra said softly. "The ones who erased your past. They are closer than you think. And this time they will not stop at Earth. They will consume every mind in this galaxy unless someone remembers how to fight them. But we don't know how you do. Deep down, the knowledge is in your blood, in your songs, in your children's dreams. You just need to listen." As if on cue, the Cthar swarm returned. But this time they did not attack. They formed a ring around the black ship and the Coalition fleet. Their ships pulsed with soft red light, a sign of truce. Dana's eyes widened. "They are not enemies. They are refugees too." Lyra nodded. "They fled the Devourers just as we did. They have been searching for the Keepers for generations. They thought we were gone. But now they see us, and they see you." Mara looked at the Cthar ships, then at the humans on the Zenith, then at the dragon beside her. For the first time she understood. This was not a war of species. It was a war of memory, and humanity held a key they did not even know they had. Back on the Zenith, Dana made a decision. She opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, this is Captain Ellis. Stand down." Repeat, "Stand down." That vessel is not our enemy. It is our past, and maybe our future. Some ships obeyed immediately. Others hesitated, but none fired. In the silence that followed, Lyra turned to Mara. "Will you help us wake the rest?" Mara took a deep breath. "Yes." "Then come. The real work begins now." As the black ship glowed with soft light, the first human in 10,000 years stepped onto the back of a dragon and flew into the stars, not as a soldier but as a bridge between worlds, and far away in the dark something ancient stirred. It had tasted fear before, but it had never tasted hope, and it did not know what to make of it. The Coalition High Command did not take Dana's defiance lightly. Within hours, a strike team was dispatched from the command carrier Orion. Their orders were clear. Board the black ship. Capture the elf woman. Secure the dragon. And if resistance was met, eliminate all threats. The team moved in under cloak, their armor painted matte black, their weapons humming with stun and kill settings. They believed they were facing an alien weapon. They did not know they were walking into a garden. Mara watched from the observation deck as the boarding pods latched onto the hull. She felt their fear, their anger, their rigid certainty. Beside her, Lyra stood calm, her hand resting on Valrin's scaled shoulder. "They do not understand," she said softly. "They will," she replied, "but not through force." The inner airlock hissed open. 6 soldiers stepped inside, rifles raised. Their leader, a sergeant with a scar across his brow, barked orders. "Secure the area. Find the targets. No one moves without my say." The chamber they entered was not what they expected. No metal walls, no blinking consoles. Instead, they stood in a vast open space filled with trees whose leaves glowed like fireflies. Streams of clear water wound through mossy stones, and flowers bloomed in colors that had no name. The air was warm and carried the scent of earth after rain. "Where are we?" one soldier whispered. "This is not a ship," the sergeant growled. "It is a trap." Then he saw them. Lyra standing beneath a great silver tree. Valrin coiled behind her, eyes half closed but watching. Mara stood a few steps away, her hands open, empty. "Freeze," he shouted. "Hands where I can see them." Lyra did not move. She simply looked at him. Not with fear, not with anger. With pity. "You carry so much pain," she said. "Why, shut up," he snapped. "You are under arrest by order of the United Galactic Coalition." "For what?" "For interfering in a war zone. for using mind weapons, for consorting with the Cathar. We did none of those things. We only showed you the truth. The truth is what we say it is. Then you have forgotten how to see." Enraged, the sergeant raised his rifle. "That is enough. Take them down." His finger tightened on the trigger. Valrin opened his eyes. Not with rage, not with fire, but with song. A single note filled the chamber. It was not loud. It was deep. It vibrated through the floor, through the air, through the bones of every soldier. It did not hurt. It remembered. The sergeant froze. His rifle slipped from his hands. Tears streamed down his face as a memory surfaced. He was a boy again, standing in a field of wheat under a yellow sun. His mother called his name. He ran to her arms. He had not thought of her in 20 years, not since the war took her. Around him, the other soldiers dropped to their knees. One sobbed, clutching his helmet. Another laughed through tears as he remembered his first kiss. The anger, the fear, the rigid control melted away, replaced by something softer, older, something human. Mara walked toward them slowly. "It is okay," she said. "You are safe now." The sergeant looked up at her, eyes wide. "Who are you? Someone like you. Someone who forgot." And then remembered. On the zenith, Dana watched the feed from the boarding team's helmets. She saw the soldiers weep. She saw them embrace. She saw them become people again, not just soldiers. Lisa stood beside her, stunned. What is that sound? It's not sound. It's resonance. The dragon is syncing with their neural patterns. He is not attacking them. He is healing them. But how? Because he carries human memory in his blood, and they carry his in theirs. They are the same. Before Dana could respond, a new alert blared across the bridge. Admiral Carter had activated the orbital lance, the planet cracker weapon mounted on the Orion. It was charging. "Its target, the black ship." "No," Dana whispered. Lisa checked the data. "He is bypassing all safety protocols. He is going to fire in 90 seconds. Dana's mind raced. She had no authority to stop him. Her override had been revoked. But she had one last option. "Mara," she said into the comms, "get off that ship now. He is going to fire the lance." Mara looked up at the sky through the open chamber. She saw the energy building in the distance, a growing point of white light that would soon tear through space and vaporize everything. She turned to Lyra. "We have to go." Lyra shook her head. "No, this is where we stand. But you will die. Death is not the end." Forgetting as Valrin rose to his full height, his scales shimmered brighter than ever. He looked at Mara and gave a soft rumble, almost a purr. Mara understood. They were not running. They were answering. She made her choice. She stayed. On the Orion, Admiral Carter watched the countdown. 30 seconds. He felt no joy. Only grim duty. Better to lose one ship than risk the entire fleet to an unknown threat. 10 seconds. The black ship did not move. 5. Then Lyra stepped forward. She raised both arms to the sky. Valrin spread his wings wide and tilted his head back, and they sang. Not a note this time. A symphony. Light erupted from the black ship, not fire, not explosion, but pure golden radiance. It flowed outward in waves, touching the orbital lance as it fired. The beam of destruction met the song of memory, and something impossible happened. The lance did not explode. It transformed. The energy twisted and bloomed like a flower unfolding in fast motion. Metal turned to wood, light turned to leaf. Within seconds, the weapon was gone. In its place floated a great tree of light, its roots spreading through space, its branches cradling nearby asteroids. Where its light touched, radiation scars on dead worlds began to heal. Plants sprouted on barren moons. Oxygen returned to poisoned atmospheres. On the Orion, the crew stared in awe. Even Admiral Carter dropped. To his knees, his face wet with tears, he could not explain on the black ship the soldiers who had come to capture. Lyra now knelt before her, not in fear but in gratitude. Mara walked to the edge of the chamber and looked out at the tree of light. It was beautiful. It was alive. And it was made from a weapon of war. How, she asked. Because destruction is just creation waiting to remember itself, Lyra said. Back on the zenith, Dana felt a shift in the air. The Cathar swarm, which had been holding position at the edge of the system, now moved. Not to attack, to witness. Their ships formed a circle around the tree of light. Then one by one they emitted a soft chime. It was their version of a song. A song of thanks. Lisa turned to Dana, eyes wide. They are not enemies. They never were. No, Dana said softly. They were waiting for us to remember too. As the light from the tree faded, the black ship remained untouched. The soldiers who had boarded it now stood quietly helping tend to the glowing plants that had grown inside the chamber. The sergeant looked at Mara. "What do we do now?" "You go back," she said, "and you tell them what you saw. Not with reports. With your heart." He nodded. "I will." When they left, they did not take prisoners. They carried stories. On the Orion, Admiral Carter sat alone in his quarters. The tree of light still glowed outside his window. He thought of his daughter lost in the first Cathar attack. He had buried his grief in duty, in control. But now he remembered her laugh, her love of stars, and for the first time in years he let himself cry. Meanwhile, deep in the black ship, Mara sat with Lyra and Valrin. She felt different, lighter, as if a weight she did not know she carried had been lifted. "Why did you stay?" she asked Lyra. "You could have left. Because if we run, they will always fear us. If we stand, they might learn to trust, and if they don't, then we stand anyway." Valrin lowered his head and nuzzled Mara gently. She placed her hand on his snout and felt a warmth spread through her. It was not just comfort. It was connection, as if their hearts now beat in the same rhythm. Outside the ship, the coalition fleet hung in silence. No orders came. No weapons charged. For the first time in months there was peace, but it would not last. Far beyond the Andromeda frontier in the void between galaxies, something stirred. It had felt the song. It had seen the tree of light. And it did not like that memory was returning. The Devourers were coming. They moved not with ships but with silence. They erased stars as they passed, leaving only cold and dark. They fed on thought, on story, on love. And they were hungry. On the black ship, Lyra looked up as if sensing the shift in the fabric of space. "They know we are here," she said. Mara felt a chill. "What do we do? Prepare. And we wake the rest." She turned to Valrin. "It is time." The dragon nodded. Then he opened his great maw and released a pulse of violet mist. It spread through the ship, through the fleet, through every human within range. It carried a message not in words but in feeling. Remember, on the zenith, Dana felt it. A spark in her chest. A name on the tip of her tongue. A promise made long ago. Lisa gasped as her console lit up with strange readings. "Captain, the mist, it is activating more DNA markers. People are waking up all over the fleet." "Good," Dana said. "Let them wake." Because the real war was not against the Cathar. It was against forgetting. And humanity was finally ready to remember who they were, and who they were meant to become. Mara spent days inside the black ship, walking its living halls, listening to the hum of its heart. She learned that every wall, every vine, every drop of water held a story. The ship was not built. It was grown, and it remembered everything. One evening she found a chamber deep in the core where light pooled like liquid. In the center floated a crystal no larger than her fist. It pulsed with a soft blue glow. As she reached for it, Lyra appeared beside her. "This is the last archive," she said. "The final memory of Earth before the Great Silence." Mara touched the crystal. Instantly she was not on the ship anymore. She stood on a green hill under a sky filled with two suns. Humans in simple clothes laughed and worked beside tall silver-haired beings. Dragons soared overhead, their wings casting shadows like clouds. Children played at the feet of elders who sang songs that made flowers bloom. But then the sky cracked. A black tear opened above the world. From it poured machines without faces, without sound. They did not burn. They did not kill. They simply erased. Memories, thoughts, names. People fell to their knees, not dead but empty. Their eyes blank. Their voices gone. The elves and dragons gathered the humans, not to fight, to save. "We wove your minds into our blood." Lyra's voice echoed in the vision. "We carried your dreams in our bones. We flew through the dark for 1,000 years until Earth healed. Then we returned you. But the link broke. You forgot us, and the Devourers thought they had won." The vision faded. Mara stood, trembling, tears on her cheeks. "Why did you leave us?" she asked. "We never left. We waited. Hidden in the edges of your myths, in your stories of elves and dragons, in your lullabies. We were always there, watching, hoping you would remember." Mara looked at her hands. "So every human carries a piece of you and of Valrin, and of Earth before the silence. The Devourers cannot erase what lives in blood and bone." Back on the Zenith, Dana called a meeting with her senior staff. She told them everything. The memory. The archive. The truth. Some believed. Some did not. But Lisa had proof. She had spent nights analyzing the dragon's biology. She found that Valrin's cells contained not just human DNA, but specific sequences tied to empathy, creativity, and long-term memory. More than that, his biofield activated matching sequences in humans. The dragon was not just a creature, he was a key. And Mara, she said, is the first to fully awaken. Dana's mind raced. If what they said was true, then humanity was never meant to be alone. They were meant to stand with elves and dragons against the devourers. But to do that, they needed to wake more people. How do we do it? Lisa asked. We share the memory, Dana said. We broadcast the archive. But High Command will block it. Then we go around them. That night, Dana sent a coded message to every ship in the fleet that still trusted her. She included a data packet containing the crystal's memory. She did not ask them to believe. She asked them to feel. On the medical ship Haven, a nurse named Claire opened the file. She saw the green hills. She heard the songs, and she remembered her grandmother whispering a strange lullaby in a language no one knew. She wept. On the freighter Iron Route, a young pilot named Ben watched the vision and felt a pull in his chest. He had always loved dragons as a child. Now he knew why. Within hours, reports came in from across the fleet. People were waking up. Not all, but enough. Enough to form a network, a web of memory spreading through the stars. Meanwhile, Lyra prepared Valrin for what was coming. She placed her hands on his scales and sang an old song. The dragon's eyes glowed brighter with each note. His body began to change. His scales grew sharper, his wings wider. He was becoming what he was meant to be, a guardian. Mara stood beside them. She felt different too. Her senses were sharper. She could hear thoughts not as words but as feelings. She could see the threads of memory connecting every human in the fleet. I am ready, she said. Lyra nodded. Then it is time for your ritual. What ritual? The one that will let you hear his true name. Valrin lowered his head. Mara placed her palms on his snout and closed her eyes. At first there was silence, then a sound. Not a word. A feeling. Warm, strong, ancient. It filled her chest like sunlight. She did not speak it aloud. She carried it inside her. Valrin's true name was not for others to hear. It was a bond. A promise. When she opened her eyes, she saw the world differently. She saw the fear in the Coalition soldiers, the hope in the Kadar, the pain in Admiral Carter, and she knew what to do. She returned to the Zenith not as a technician but as a bridge. Dana's eyes widened when she saw her. You look different. I feel different. I know what we must do. Tell me, we must unite. Not just humans. The Cathar, too. They were also victims of the Devourers. They fled just like we did. They have been searching for the Keepers for generations. Lisa frowned. But they attacked us. They were desperate. They thought we had forgotten them, too. Dana's thought for a long time. Then she made a call. Open a channel to the Cthair hive mind. Full encryption. No weapons active. The comms officer hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. A moment later, the screen filled with shifting red patterns. The Cthar did not speak in words. They spoke in pulses of light and sound. But Mara understood. They are asking if we remember, she said. Tell them yes, Dana said. Mara closed her eyes and sent a thought not through comms but through the memory in her blood. She showed them the green hills, the songs, the dragons, the promise. The Cthar pulses changed, from red to gold. From fear to joy they remember too, she whispered. On the bridge everyone felt it, a shift, a joining. Then Admiral Carter appeared on screen. His face was tired but his eyes were clear. Ellis, he said, I saw the tree. I heard the song. I remembered my daughter. I was wrong. Dana's heart leapt. Will you stand with us, sir? If what you say is true, then we have no choice. The Devourers are coming, and we cannot face them alone. Thank you, sir. The fleet began to change. Ships that once pointed weapons at each other now formed a circle around the black ship. The Cthar swarm joined them, their jagged forms now part of the whole. Humans, elves, dragons, and insectoid refugees stood together not as enemies but as survivors. Lyra watched from her ship. For the first time in 10,000 years, she smiled. They are ready, she said to Valrin. The dragon rumbled in agreement. Mara stood beside them, looking out at the united fleet. She knew the Devourers were close. She could feel the silence growing at the edge of space, but she was not afraid. Because they remembered. And memory was stronger than fear. In the engineering bay of the Zenith, Lisa worked with new purpose. She modified the fleet's weapons not to destroy but to resonate. She tuned them to the frequency of the dragon's song. Each ship would now carry a note in the symphony of remembrance. On the medical ship, Claire taught others the old lullaby. On the Iron Route, Ben painted a dragon on his cockpit window. On the Orion, Admiral Carter ordered all records of the old war purged. They would not fight as they did before. They would fight as they were meant to. Together, Mara returned to the black ship one last time before the battle. She sat with Lyra under the silver tree. "What happens if we lose?" she asked. "We will not lose, because even if our bodies fall, our memory will live. In the songs, in the stars, in the hearts of those who come after." Mara nodded. "Then I am ready." Lyra placed a hand on her head. "You were always ready. You just needed to remember." Outside the ship, the fleet waited, silent, united, awake. And far away in the dark, the devourers came. They brought silence. They brought emptiness. They brought the end of stories, but they did not know that humanity had just begun to remember theirs. The silence came first, not the quiet of space, but a deeper silence, the kind that swallows sound, thought, even time. Stars winked out along the edge of the Andromeda frontier one by one, as if snuffed by an unseen hand. Comms went dead. Sensors showed nothing, only a growing void where light used to be. The devourers had arrived. On the zenith, Dana stood on the bridge, her hands steady on the command console. Around her, the fleet held formation. Human ships, their bio-vessels, and the black ship at the center all humming with the same low tone. The dragon's song had been woven into every system, every weapon, every shield, every breath. Lisa watched the void expand on her screen. "They are erasing space-time itself," she said, voice tight. "Not just matter. Memory." Mara stood beside her, eyes closed. She could feel it. The devourers were not machines. They were absences, holes in reality that fed on meaning, on story, on love, and they were hungry. "How do we fight nothing?" Dana asked. "We do not fight it with force," Mara replied. "We fill it with meaning." Lyra appeared on the main screen, her silver hair glowing faintly. "It is time. Form the circle." The fleet moved as one. Ships turned not to face the void, but to face each other. They formed a great ring around the black ship. The Cthar ships pulsed gold, weaving between human hulls like threads in a tapestry. Valrin rose from the black ship. His wings spread wide, his scales blazing with violet and emerald light. Mara climbed onto his back. She did not wear armor. She wore the memory of Earth, the songs of her ancestors, the promise of the hills. "Hold on," Lyra said. Mara wrapped her arms around Valrin's neck. "I am ready." The devourers struck. A wave of pure nothingness rolled toward the fleet. As it passed, ships did not explode. They unraveled. Crews did not scream. They forgot. Their faces went blank, their eyes empty. They became hollow shells drifting in the dark. But the ring held, because at its heart Valrin sang. Not a single note this time, a symphony. Mara joined him, not with her voice but with her blood. She opened herself to every memory in her DNA. The first fire. The first word. The first lullaby. The first promise of love. She sent it all into the song, and the fleet answered. On the zenith, Dana broadcast every human story ever recorded. Not just data, feeling, joy, grief, hope. Lisa tuned the weapons to pulse with nursery rhymes and war cries and wedding vows. On the medical ship, Claire sang the old lullaby into the comms. On the Iron Route, Bean played a recording of his mother's laugh over the fleet channel. The Cathar added their own memories, the birth of their hive, the loss of their homeworld, the long flight through the dark. Their pulses wove into the song like drums in a storm. The devourers faltered. They had never faced this. They could erase a mind, but they could not erase a million minds singing together. They could silence a story, but they could not silence a symphony of stories. The void began to crack. Light seeped through the fractures, not starlight. Memory light, golden warm alive. Valrin flew into the heart of the storm. Mara held on as the dragon poured every human face he carried into the song. Each scale flashed with a life, a name, a dream. The devourers recoiled. They could not process so much meaning. It burned them like fire. Lyra stood on the black ship, arms wide. She did not sing. She remembered, and her memory was older than stars. The devourers shattered, not with a bang, with a sigh. Like a nightmare fading at dawn, the void collapsed in on itself, leaving only stars and silence. But this silence was different. It was peaceful, full. The fleet hung in the aftermath. No cheers, no shouts, only tears. And breath. And the soft hum of the dragon's wings. On the Orion, Admiral Carter looked out at the stars. For the first time in years, he felt peace. He opened a channel to Dana. "You were right," he said. "We were never alone." "No, sir," Dana replied. "We just forgot." In the days that followed, the galaxy changed. The Cthar were no longer seen as invaders. They were refugees welcomed home. Human ships began to grow gardens on their decks. Children learned the old songs. The black ship stayed near the fleet not as a weapon but as a teacher. Mara remained with Valrin. She no longer needed to return to the Zenith. Her place was here, between worlds, between times. One evening she sat with Lyra on the hull watching new stars form where the Devourers had been. "What now?" she asked. "Now we rebuild," Lyra said. "Not just worlds. Memory. We teach them to remember so they never forget again." Mara nodded. "And the fleet, they will become Orcs. Not of war, of story. Each ship will carry song seeds and songs. They will travel the stars not to conquer but to connect." As if on cue, the Zenith changed. Its weapons were removed. Its bays filled with soil and saplings. Dana stood on the bridge not as a captain of war, but as a keeper of memory. Lisa worked beside her, modifying engines to run on starlight and song. Claire opened a school on the medical deck teaching children the lullabies of old Earth. Ben painted a great dragon on the side of his freighter and named it Valrin's Hope. Far away in the dark, other signals began to answer, faint at first, then stronger. Other species who had also forgotten, who had also lost. They heard the symphony, and they remembered too. Lyra smiled. "The web is growing." Mara placed a hand on Valrin's snout. He rumbled softly, his scales glowing with the faces of those they had saved. Then she felt something in her pocket. She pulled out a single scale he had given her. It glowed faintly. She hummed the old lullaby. The scale pulsed in time. She knew then that the fight was never really over. It would always be there. The forgetting, the fear, the silence. But so would the memory, the song, the light. And as long as one person remembered, the rest could find their way back. On the edge of the fleet, a new vessel launched. Not a warship, an ark. Its hull was painted with dragons and stars and the faces of humans, elves, and Cthar together. At its helm stood Dana, her eyes on the horizon. Mara watched it go. She knew she would join them soon. But not yet. First she had one more song to learn. Valrin lowered his head. She climbed onto his back. They rose into the stars not as warriors but as guardians. And somewhere in the quiet between galaxies, a child on a distant world hummed a lullaby she had never been taught, and the stars listened.